and beginner sewers. Welcome back to Sew What, the podcast where I hold your hands through your beginner sewing journey. Today, we are going to be talking about a very important topic, and I want to focus on 7 easy ways to start your sustainable sewing today without spending a fortune on getting that done. So, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so today, I'm trying to figure out what is going on because I always have issues, but I am trying to do better with my um, technical stuff today. But let's see. It looks like it's not going to cooperate, which is perfectly fine. I'm going to just do what I can do and see how that works out. All right, so let's dive into this. Now, I know you might be thinking, Joy, I'm just trying to figure out how to thread my machine and sew a straight line. And isn't sustainable sewing complicated and expensive? The short answer is absolutely not. In fact, sustainable sewing is actually cheaper and much more creative than buying brand new materials. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about this a little bit, where I say, instead of actually going to the craft store, to a fabric store to get something, it actually does make more sense for you to use the things you have around the house. I always say you only need 5 basic things to get started: your sewing machine, a pair of scissors, your measuring tool, the snips if you need it, and the thread and all the other, like the little knickknacks you already have, and of course your fabrics you will need to sew on. So you don't really need a lot to get started to sew. So I'm going to go through each of these items. Like I said, I have five, and I will go through each of them, and we will I will touch upon why they're important and what they can help you with as you go along your sewing journey. So the most sustainable thing is the fabric, which you probably already own. A lot of times people see beautiful fabric, and the first thing they want to do is go out there and buy, beautiful fabric, or you see something online. I'm not gonna lie, I do fall for it quite a bit when I am, browsing the internet, and Facebook obviously knows me now. So a lot of time, it wants to send me pictures from Michaels and and Joann's and all the other stores when they're around. So I have fallen for those. But what I will say is don't let those things get to you. Don't say, hey, I have to go out and buy new fabric. What I recommend is you use what you probably already have sitting in your home, right? So if you have an old bed sheet, that will work just fine. If you have an old shirt, a few weeks ago, I made an apron for an 18-inch doll. Now, if you have one of those at home, that works just great. Like, you don't have to go out and buy something brand new, right? Those things are things that you already have at home. It's not going to end up in the landfill. And let's face it, once you start going through sheets and your sheets are either faded or they start to have holes, most people are more apt to just take it and toss it in the trash. But instead of having this end up in a landfill, you can actually just cut them up and use them on for your sewing projects. They work very well as good practice sewing materials. So, what I will say before you start your project: audit your current inventory, challenge yourself to match a pattern to fabric we already have. And then I'd like you to drop a comment in the chat here and let me know honestly how big is your fabric stash, and also like what do you plan on making with this, because sometimes we say we got this and we're going to use it for this, and then we end up not using it for that. Now, true story, this morning I woke up and Facebook posts shared a picture of fabric. And of course, the first thing I wanted to do was, oh, I want to make that. But thankfully, coincidentally, the picture they showed me is similar to one I already have. And I had a pattern already in mind that I was going to use to make that. So it actually worked out great because this time around, I'm like, hey, I already have the fabric. I'm just going to go ahead and sew something for myself that I already have fabric for. So that's your first practice. Shop your own stash and be conscious about pre-planning. So if you have questions as we go through this life, please be sure to leave it in the chat. Or if you're watching this on a later date, I'll be more than happy to respond back to any questions you might have. Yes, I'll be drinking some water too and minding my business, as they say. Okay. The second practice is sourcing eco-friendly and natural fabrics. So there's a difference between synthetic fabrics, which synthetic fabrics are typically things like polyester, nylon, acrylic, And those things are essentially things that are plasticky, right? They if you don't know, there's some things that, even like satin, and I put satin in quotation marks because in a lot of cases, like, we have satin, we say things are satin, but it's actually synthetic. It's synthetic satin. And it has a blend of other things that are added to it. And then you have the natural fibers, which are usually cotton, linen, wool, hemp, bamboo. Those are things that are also good things to have. Now, don't go out and buy things just yet, because going back to point number one, to shop your stash, what I was talking about, natural fibers like 100% cotton, linen are actually the easiest fabrics for beginners to sew on, and they don't slip. They slide into under the presser foot very nicely. It's a win-win situation, and in a lot of cases, bed sheets come as cotton. They're cotton. Baby sheets are also another one that you can use. Like, if you have a little one and they've outgrown their crib, their sheets usually are made with cotton. So that's another area where, if you had an opportunity, I will say explore that instead of actually going out and trying to get something else that you really don't need to buy. So, practice sourcing eco-friendly and natural fibers. If you have wool at home, if you have an old sweater, a wool sweater, if you have bamboo fabrics from, for example, I just had that. I just did some embroidery on bibs for my niece. That's something, like, if I had that fabric already at home, that would just work out great. I would just take it and use it. So you want to the extent possible, go with natural things. Why? Because one, over time, they hold up. Two, they're easier for you to sew on and sew with, so you're not struggling with how to use the fabric. You don't have to deal with slip. You don't have to deal with trying to understand how it works on a presser foot. So that actually is a win-win situation for you. Now let's go on to the third point, which is a thrift store flipping and upcycling. So this one I love, because you cannot tell me you're a crafter or sewist and have never been to a thrift store. That is something I feel every crafter or sewist should absolutely do. Visit a thrift store, Salvation Army. I forget, there's a couple of thrift stores not too far from where I am, and I do just every now and then enjoy, because one is closer, Starbucks not too far from me. I enjoy just walking around and seeing what they have. Like, you don't you so if you're a crafter and if you're a beginner sewist, you need to also have an active imagination. You need to imagine the possible. Okay, I'm not going to say the impossible. You need to imagine the possible. What are some things I can do with this? How can I create this with this? How can I upcycle this fabric and create something beautiful? How can I take a dress and turn it into a skirt? How can I take a pair of pants and turn it into a skirt? These are opportunities you will find when you go to a thrift store. So I feel like, that's one that sometimes people sleep on, but let me just tell you, you do not want to sleep on that. In addition to that, thrift stores have things that are reasonably priced. You will find things that, in a lot of situations, you can already use them for something else. I believe in, trying to, when you purchase something, it should not only be for one use. You should be able to use it for multiple things. Like, if you're using a cup, you should be able to use it not just to drink, but to pour water. And it should not just be for just ice water. You should be able to use it for warm water as well, or to take it as a travel cup. Like, there's so many different options, and I feel like, the same thing should be applied to your sewing and crafting journey. If you are looking to create an eco-friendly, sustainable type sewing lifestyle journey, then a thrift store is a good place to go to. And all I say is, go with your imagination. Just see what's possible when you get there. Look at the aisle. I know that sometimes after the holiday season, a lot of people give away tree skirts and different things like that. Is that something you can repurpose for, like, a runner? Is that something you can repurpose for a placemat? Is that something you can repurpose for what you call it, like a book cover? There's so many things you can do when you walk into a thrift store. So that's another way to continue to increase and improve and work on your sustainability, your eco-friendly sewing journey. So again, don't feel that you have to go buy something new. Upcycle old clothes from your own closet. You can turn your jeans into a tote bag. There's so many videos out there, and if there's one you would like me to show, when I first started sewing, it first started on this YouTube channel, I used to do a lot more sewing type, upcycling type things. And over time, like, I was just like, okay, well, I have some clothes I already wear, so I don't know if it's considered upcycle if I just adjust them when I lose weight or when I gain weight to make an adjustment. But that is a version of upcycling. Like, if you have clothes in your closet, Don't throw them out if you're, gain or lose weight. Make adjustments. Add, a panel on the side if you gain weight. Use your sewing machine and measure. Like upcycling is also another great way to practice your sewing skills. So what I would say, like if I lost some weight, it's another way to figure out, pinning. How do I pin this? How do I get it right? How do I make it still sit right? And all of that stuff is in your closet already. You don't need to go out and buy something new. You can actually just take that and go sew with it. So, your closet is a great place. The thrift store is a great place. Flipping and upcycling things you already have. If you want to shorten a pair of pants to create shorts, also another thing you could do. And you're not just saving environment, because these don't end up in the landfill after all. You can also use them for gifting. Like some people actually really absolutely love re-gifted items because they know that it's something that could have ended up in the landfill and will not end up there. You can use patterns. I think one of the things I've seen is where you find a beautiful piece of fabric and you're like, oh, I'm not so sure what to do with it, but there are beautiful patterns that I see here that I might want to use. You can use that and cut it out and use it to make buttons. You can use them to make, like hoop fabrics or different things like that for a handmade ornament. So great things to do, great ideas. Don't feel that you always have to go out and buy something new. I seem to have a strand of hair right next to my nose, and I'm trying to get it out. So, anyway, again, if you have any questions and you're not sure about your sewing journey or you have questions related to any of that, please feel free to drop in the chat. I'm always happy to answer sewing related questions. And today we're talking about eco friendly sewing and sustainable sewing and finding ways that we can stay sustainable without spending too much money. The fourth item I wanted to mention is a mid roll break, which is a community and channel support where if you go on Facebook, you'll find a lot of other sites where the people who will exchange things like patterns, they will exchange ideas, they will share what they've done. Some people also have like all this fabric stash that they want to get rid of. This, like sustainable sewing is also being a part of those kinds of support groups because what they do is someone buys 5 yards and it turns out they only need 3.5. They will list 1.5. That's one less thing to go out to the store and buy. It's cheaper for you. You're actually making good use of it, and it's fun. It's fun to see what other people create with things and then try to recreate it. I, for one, am someone who likes like patchwork type things. Now, I wouldn't say I'm good at it because I'm still practicing my quilting, so don't come for me. But I still think that it's something that is beautiful when you can bring multiple pieces together and create something beautiful out of it. So if you're looking for a simple step-by-step projects to practice your eco-friendly habits, or you can always go on to Facebook. There's so many groups out there. I'll be more than happy to share some if you leave me a comment, and I will let you know some of the ones I'm already a part of. I love to see the projects that people make. Sometimes people share them. Sometimes people direct you to other sites where you can get that information. So, and then there are also many sites where they also have beginner friendly patterns. And they help you build. These are things that will continue you can work on to continue to build your confidence without wasting materials. So I will say build your community, go with, go join channels, subscribe to this channel because I do talk about that as well. Subscribe to this channel, join channels that will help you continue to grow, and just watch videos that actually contribute to helping you grow without wasting money. I am a huge proponent of saving your coins. So if you don't have to spend it, like, listen, sewing is already an expensive habit. Okay, a sewing machine could set you back about 150 to $200,000, $200, not thousand. Well, $150 to $200, and depending on the kind of sewing machine you have, if you want one that comes with bells and whistles, the price is on the higher end. It could be higher than that. What I say is, you save where you can and focus your skill sets on making, like growing and getting that experience. And then as you continue to improve and do better, you can always. There's nothing wrong with going out and buying, all the fabric and the fun things you want to do. Some people eventually want to become fashion designers. Some people eventually want to make things that they can sell at craft stores and different things like that, or make things for their family. I know growing up, my mom used to make us dresses and skirts and things like that. So these are things that you can do for yourself. And not only are you saving the environment, not only are you saving yourself money, but you're also doing something that's fun and feels fulfilling. So you feel like it's not a wasted effort. So you can continue to grow and improve your sewing journey and not add on the added cost to that. The fourth item I want to mention is the art of the scrap, so zero waste sewing. So here's the thing: if you've watched any of my prior videos, I you will see that sometimes, like when I have batting, it's like a patchwork batting. So I don't toss out the usable pieces of batting. I shouldn't say any of my pieces of batting because there's some pieces that are really tiny and they're not necessarily usable for other things. But if I have batting and it's something that's still usable, anything over 2 by 2, like 2 inches by 2 inches, that's definitely usable. I will hold on to it. I have a little bucket that I will hold on to it. And whenever I am bored and like let's say I can't think of something else that I want to do, I just take my sewing machine, use zigzag stitches, and just attach them to each other, and then I get a much bigger panel. Why waste? It's still usable. I think that's one of the things that people tend to do when they first start sewing. They cut things out and they toss it. I will not waste. Like even the smallest fabric pieces, if I can use it for a handle, I will keep it in a little pile. Now I do have separate little piles, so huge fabric pieces end up in one pile. I have another pile that I use for stuffing what's called my poof, POUF. I usually have that where I will take that and say, okay, I want this poof to continue to grow. It's a big one. So it's taking a lot of old pieces of fabrics that I don't necessarily want to use for sewing, but it's being used to create and grow my poof so I can have a sitting item or a footstool in my office. So again, no waste, zero waste. Even the tiniest shredded bits of fabrics and threads can be saved in a jar, and you can use them later as sustainable stuffing for pin cushions, plushies, or pet beds. So again, don't throw these things out. You can still use them for different things. I love to use stuffing, smaller pieces for things I can stuff, especially if they're soft pieces. You don't necessarily have to put them in the trash. You can always just, set them aside, create a stuffy and different things like that. And you can put them, into in there because nobody's actually looking on the inside. Why spend money buying polyfill and all the other things when um, you can actually just use it for something else. Also, some of these fabric pieces, like when you have long ones, you can use them for ties. I do that. I do save them. You can use them for wrapping gifts because if you have long pieces of fabrics that are not wide enough but are long enough, you can use them to wrap. You can wrap presents for birthdays, for Christmas, for holidays, and different things like that. And you know what? The other double tip is that they look very unique when you wrap them up. So sometimes, the brown paper that comes with Amazon orders, like I don't know if everybody does that, but I do save my Amazon brown papers because you can use those for wrapping or you can use them for shipping. And if you have that, just get it, iron it flat because sometimes it comes all squished up. Iron it flat, fold it, put it to the side, and then during the holidays, you can just use your fabric pieces, the pieces you've saved throughout the year, take them and use them as your ribbon. So that is a pro tip that you can use and make a unique gift wrapping for yourself. Okay. Now, practice number 5 is caring for your sewing tools and quality over quantity. So I'm a little parched, so I'm drinking some. I'm getting my fluids in. So, quality over quantity. So, one thing I will say is you want to buy the right tools and you want to buy good tools that will last. Okay. So, I've seen situations where people buy like a pair of scissors is the best one I can use for this example. When I first started sewing, the first thing I did was buy a good pair of scissors. I got not the Guggenheim at the time. I got a Geiger pair of scissors, and I can tell you, I've had those scissors for more than a decade. And not once have I had to go get it sharpened. Not once have I had to go fix it, tighten, or do anything. And I used those scissors, until recently. I used them just about every time I was cutting something. A good sewing tool will last you an extended period of time. Yes, it was an investment at the time. I think it was 40 something dollars. I don't know if that's the same price it costs right now. But when you get something that's going to be good, it will last you for an extended period of time. Like in the old days, the Singer sewing machines, those things that will whirl and whirl and whirl. Why? I mean, now I can go on Facebook Marketplace and I can still see those items that are selling for that much, right? So again, they're selling a lot more. I mean, selling for a lot more now, but those machines are machines that are still working. They're still usable. So just because something is older does not mean you should get something newer. Invest in the right items, and it will save you over time. Like taking care of a thing, of your sewing machine. When you buy a good sewing machine, and I am not talking about what I would consider the toy sewing machines. Get a full size sewing machine. I teach at out school, and I am the first person to say, "Get a full size sewing machine." Okay, you need a full size sewing machine. You don't need one of the ones that you will say that you play with, or toys, the easy going or easy on or easy. I forget what it's called now, sewing machine. That is not what you need. You actually need a sewing machine that is going to work and that will last. So I was trying to see if I could find the name of some of the ones I've seen in the past, but I can't find it. So I'm just going to let that go. But all I will say is get a full size sewing machine. Don't get one that barely works and you're not going to be able to use over time. So um, all right. So the other thing is maintain your sewing machine. Get it cleaned. The bobbin area needs to be cleaned. If you don't know how to do that, there are several videos out there on YouTube, on TikTok, or on whatever other channels that walk you through how to take apart your bobbin case area. Use a little brush. There's so many little, like if you don't have a regular machine brush, you can just get one of the art brushes that you will get at the dollar store. You don't go out and buy a whole kit. Okay, don't. The only thing I would say is if you're buying something for your sewing machine maintenance, you want to get the right machine oil. So if that is something that you plan on doing, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting the right oils to oil the parts. But again, as a beginner sewist, you do not need to go out and buy a whole kit for maintaining your sewing machine. Make sure you're changing out the needles. So you want to get good quality needles that will last, not the ones that will break, 5 stitches. I know when I first started, I don't even know where I bought those needles from. I think it was, I have no clue where I got them from, but the needles I had would break all the time. And I, the only thing that I took on for it is the fact that I wear glasses. So I figured if the thing broke and jumped, it would protect my eyes. But you should not feel like that when you're sewing. You should be able to, you should be able to sew and have confidence in the fact that you have the right tools and they will work throughout your sewing journey. So the rule of thumb is usually for every 8 hours that you sew, you change out your needle. And I know that it's like, okay, then how do I calculate the 8 hours? It doesn't mean that if you sew today, you sew 20 minutes, then that's a whole day. No, it just basically means if you're sewing, let's say you typically spend like a half hour sewing every week, you would just calculate that and say, okay, so every 16 weeks I need to change out my needle. If you spend a whole hour sewing every week, you're going to say every 8 weeks, every 2 months, and you can. What I would also recommend is if you're doing that, like you also time it with cleaning out your sewing machine. So if you're changing your needle, clean out your sewing machine, clean out your bobbin area, take apart all the gunk. It comes with most machines. If you're buying it brand new, comes with a screwdriver or the little disc that looks like a quarter. You can use it to open it, take out the parts in the back. Just make sure you're getting everything adjusted so that your machine can stay clean and continue to function properly. Buy new shears that are good. Don't get ones that are dull. Your regular, office snacks or office supply scissors will not cut it. Those will dull over time and they're just not the right pair for fabrics. So when you're going out, get a good pair. I recommend Guggenheim. I recommend Geiger. Those are good things that you will continue to use. The cheap ones will eventually end up in the landfill. So if you get a good pair of scissors, it will last you an extended period of time. Get the right thread, not the ones to continue to shred over time, because those just don't do anything for you. And then before I go into the sixth point, I want to talk about this video. It's been sponsored by Handful. It is an all-flattering sports bra that's great for women, especially if you work out, if you're a woman of a certain size, or if you're a woman who has had kids and things are not necessarily staying uplifted. These bras are for you. It provides comfort in front. It helps keep things in place, and you can get your workout on without thinking about what you're wearing. So they're comfortable, they're good to have. And right now, you can also shop with my code. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it in the chat for you. If you're interested, you can pick up a pair. Code is SEWJOY, SEWJOY. So go ahead and pick up a pair and you'll save 15% or 30% using that code. Okay, so now let's talk about the sixth practice you should do for sustainable sewing. That's proper garment and textile care. This is a big saver, and this is a tip that saves you money. Sustainability continues after the project is finished. So when you sew, if you use the right fabrics and you use the right materials, the fabric and everything will last. That's why people say you want something that's good and not something that will start to fall apart. So, like I said, when you sew, like let's say with a pair of cotton sheets, that's something that will last you. I don't care if you wear that dress every day. If it's 100% cotton, I guarantee you it's going to last for multiple years to come. Okay. If you're sewing, however, with polyester, those are things that are not necessarily because of the way they're made, eventually they break down. So they're not necessarily things that are going to last you for an extended period of time through multiple washes, through harsh chemicals, and through different things. So eventually they start to fall apart, they start to break apart because that's just what they were. They were made, I wouldn't say cheaply, but they were made with materials that are not necessarily meant to last an extended period of time. So invest in the proper garment and ensure that you're taking very good care of the materials when you get them. Wash your fabrics based on how it's supposed to be washed. Avoid harsh chemicals. Yeah, I know in the old days people used to line dry their stuff. I am from the generation that initially started. You would hang your clothes up to dry. Eventually, we got dryers in most households, so now we all use dryers. But to the extent possible, if there are things that you can hang up to dry, that is what you want to do instead of just throwing everything in the dryer. There's some fabrics I will say never want to put in the dryer, like a bathing suit. You want to hang it up. But then there are other fabrics there. I say, okay, maybe you do want to shrink it up a little, shrink it a little bit, or different things like that. So make sure you're also taking care of the fabrics you have, the garments you have. So sewing goes beyond just creating something and then letting it go. You want to make sure that you create something and you can use it over and over again. That is another way that you're actually saving and making sure things are sustainable. You know, you also want to do like if a seam pops or a hole appears, don't be the first person that says I'm going to toss this. So when you invest in good fabrics, you use good tools, and you put things together. If you end up with a hole here or there, your first instinct shouldn't be to just toss it. See how you can repair it. See how you can add some fun and character to things. I usually love watching the upcycle videos where people, let's say a hole or rip, develops in their jeans and then they create a flower around it. Those are just the cutest things. So have a mindset of how can I repair versus just tossing things. And when you're using the right tools and you're using the right fabrics and you're using the right things, those are things that you can continue to use over and over again. The garments you can continue to wear, the bags you can continue to repair and use over and over again instead of actually having to get something brand new. The last thing I wanted to mention is mindful printing and pattern use. So PDFs are fantastic. Whoop, whoop. And I will say I am guilty of always printing out PDFs. As a matter of fact, the pattern I mentioned that I saw this morning that I already had the fabric for, it's one that I was like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to print out the PDF. And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, hold up. I think I had over 48 pages for that pattern. 48 pages. Think about how many trees, how many leaves, how many different things, the ink on my machine, the time it takes to put it all together, and all of that. There's some patterns that are smaller, like for a bag or things that you don't necessarily have to invest a lot of time in. However, if you're printing something for an outfit, to the extent possible, you can either use a projector, which is now a little more common. You don't necessarily need to have one hanging from your roof. You can also use a projector with a stand that just faces down on your fabric. So The good thing about that is you can adjust it on your computer, so you're not going to be printing out a whole bunch of pattern of fabric pieces. I mean, a whole bunch of paper to do that. Also, reuse your patterns. Just because you sew something once does not mean you should toss the patterns that you use. I am notorious for keeping like so many pieces of papers. It's not even funny. Like my office has lots and lots and lots of papers, but you can reuse them. You can adjust the pattern and you can make use of it for something else. You can trace it onto durable, reusable materials so you aren't reprinting the same basic shapes over and over again. One of the things when I first started sewing was pleated skirts, and I love that so much that I use that pattern for so many different things. You can use it for a skirt, you can use it for a baby doll dress, like you can use it for so many different things. You don't necessarily need to toss out the patterns just because you've made your first outfit or whatever. So these are the 7 practices that I believe will help you as you continue on your sewing journey. Sustainable sewing isn't about being perfect; it's about making small intentional choices every time you sit down at your machine. Whether you start by saving your scraps or by sourcing your next fabric from a thrifted tablecloth, you can make a difference. So I want to hear from you. Which of the 7 practices are you going to try first? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to visit my site at isewithjoy.com. And also be sure to subscribe to this channel because I share tips and tricks for beginner sewers. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today on this podcast. Happy sewing, and I'll see you in the next video.